I actually have a friend or an old friend who killed someone. And he said, honestly, and this is a little bit dark, but he said it was awesome.
Huh. Right.
I mean, he said it was, and this was a bad person. They'd been in a fight. I mean, you know, like, but yeah, he said there was something. And I mean, this guy's obviously pretty affected. You know, he's kind of caught up in the dark arts, if you will. You know, he's more, you know, if you were watching Harry Potter, he's more like Slytherin than he is like Gryffindor, you know?
Right.
But he said there was something.
Well, it's not like there's no pleasure in mayhem and destruction.
Right.
Right. It's just perhaps something that should be replaced by a better pleasure.
A better pleasure. And I think that's
almost... You've got to watch it. If there was no meat to the temptation, it would be irrelevant. The dark places that people go are very tempting.
Yeah.
And it's even more complicated than that, because naive people aren't better than people who are looking at the darkness. Right? And so, you know, the naive people think, oh, well, everyone should be naive in these little boxes and all protected. And, you know, the people who pop outside of that and engage a bit with the darker things, they think, well, you naive people, you're just naive. It's like, yeah, naive first, cynical second, wise third. You want to get through cynicism and darkness to wisdom as fast as you possibly can. And you should know that that's a place to go.
Right. But, just like you were saying a minute ago, it's like you need to know that there are places to go from where you are.
Yes,
there always are.
And they have to be real and not naive. You know, think, well, why should I be good? It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't if good is just naive. But, you know, the really good people aren't naive. They're tough as they can possibly be, and they've seen things. And then they decide to become good. It's
steadfast. I mean, you have to, I'm realizing that I have to daily show up for myself if I want my life to be what I want it to be.
Right.
It is a battle. And not only that, but it's like you have to have some sort of a plan. When I used to be a little bit more aimless, I was just like, oh, I want things to be good. It wasn't enough.
No.
Because things don't know how to just be good.
This is true. All by left to themselves, things go from bad to worse.
Things will go out of town. Things will, yes, that's entropy.
Yeah, like leave your house alone for a year. Yeah. See what happens to it. It's like, it's way better. It's like, no, it's not. It has black mold everywhere, right? And a vandal has moved in. There's graffiti everywhere. And there's squirrels drawing a pentagram. Like things have gotten out of hand. I think good is more powerful than evil. And I say that lightly, man. I studied evil for like 30 years.
Yeah, man. You're like dark. Yeah, you've been in the dark arts, man.
Yeah, well, that and the clinical practice, you know. So I've looked at the darkest things I could find, and some of them I barely recovered from.
And you still believe that good
I believe more. I believe more than I did before. I believe that our capacity to transcend evil is far more powerful than evil, even though evil is no bloody joke. Well, that gave us World War II. It gave us the Gulag Archipelago and the horrors of the Soviet Union and communist China and Cambodia. And it's like the horrible tortures that went along with that, the mass slaughter, the malevolence and the lies, all of that. It's like, yeah, man, that's dark. The light is brighter than the dark is dark.
Wow.
And that's something, man, because the dark is plenty dark. The darkness issue, it did surprise me, because like when I wrote Maps of Meaning, which as I said was my first book, I started writing that in 1985, and I picked the worst problem I could think of to solve, the worst thing, and it had to do with what happened in Auschwitz. There was something that happened in Auschwitz. It was a variety of this problem. So people were packed into cattle cars and shipped to Auschwitz, and that was rough, man. Like they were packed into the cattle cars. So if it was winter, the people around the edges froze to death, right? They froze. And if it was summer, the people in the middle died because they got too hot, right? It was horrible, right? It was horrible. And then they were taken to these concentration camps, right? And then the concentration camps, of course, had the gas chambers and the incineration chambers.
I've seen them. I've been to visit.
And
But yeah, I've seen them.
Right, and so one of the things the guards used to do is they'd take the prisoners off the cars, and it's not like they hadn't already been tortured quite nicely and were already headed for death, and so it's already pretty much as bad as it could get, but oh no, that wasn't bad enough. So one of the tricks the guards used to play was they'd get the prisoners who could still more or less move to carry a sack of wet salt from one side of the compound to the other. It's like when you think, well, that's not so bad. It's like, yeah, it's bad. Those were the size of cities. This was a major journey, and it was a 100-pound sack of wet salt.
And especially when your pores you're hurt, cuts open on your body.
But then they would have them carry it back. You see, and that's the little twist there. It's like, well, it's one thing if you're a guard and the damn salt needs to be moved, and you're just the slave owner whipping the whip, but at least the salt has to be moved. The wall has to be built. There's something in it. There's something in it. Carry that there and now carry it back. It's like, okay, so that wasn't the question I was trying to solve. The question is, what would I have to be like to do that and enjoy it? Right, because there were people who did that, and they were people, and they enjoyed it.
And there were a lot of them.
Right, and there were a lot of them, yes, and they weren't so different from you than you think.
Wow.
So that's the thing that I was trying to figure out. It's like, what the hell's at the bottom of that? Well, that was the darkest places I could find to look. There's this story. This is a story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. So they're off to look for the Holy Grail, which is the container of the redeeming substance. So it's value itself. It's the ultimate value. Well, they don't know where to go look for the Holy. It's the cup that held Christ's blood from the cross, or maybe the cup that he drank at the Last
Yeah, it was
Supper.
in Indiana Jones, too.
Yeah, that's right, of course. And the Holy Grail is a very, very old idea, and it stands for the ultimate value. Where do you go to look for the ultimate value? Well, the answer in the story of King Arthur and the Holy Grail is all the knights are around a round table because they're all equal. They all decide to go off and look for the round table. So they all go look at the forest, and each knight looks and sees where the forest looks darkest to him, and that's where he starts. It's like, yes, that's wisdom. And I learned that also from Carl Jung. He derived a dictum from alchemy. Inster qualinus invenitur, which means that which you most need to find will be found where you least want to look. Right. But what's so interesting, and this I didn't expect this, is that if you peer into the darkest dark, you find the brightest light. And I never expected that, but that's what happened. I thought, oh, this is horrible even beyond what I could comprehend. But the light that can overcome that exists. The light that can overcome that exists. It's actually real. And I think the instinct that we have that manifests itself within us as meaning, which is what you feel, for example, when you listen to music that you really love. You feel that sense of intrinsic meaning. That meaning is a guide to the light. I mean metaphorically. Right. I mean religiously, but I also mean biologically.
Right.
I mean in reality. That sense of meaning is the guide to the light that overcomes the darkness. And the darkness is dark. It's really dark. But that means the light has to be that much brighter, and it is. I really believe that.
I love that. And just since you've gone there, it's like it's so real, man. It just seems so real when you say it for some reason, because you've done the work. You've seen, you've tried to start at that darkest spot, and then to still say that.
That's the thing.
Because if that's not the story, though, then there is no story. It's like that has to be the story, that we go, that it ends in positive, that it goes upward. Otherwise, there's nothing. If that's not the story.
Yeah, well, that's a very good way of looking at it. I think that's
so.
The case.
Who would ever choose nothing? It's just such a pointless. There's no.
That's
it's
Mephistopheles. It's Satan's dictum. That things are so terrible that it would be better if there was nothing at all. Yeah, there's a whole line of German literature, speculative literature that was laid out by a man named Goethe, who wrote a play called Faust, about a man who sold his soul to the devil for knowledge. And Mephistopheles features in Faust. He's the tempter. He's Satan himself, and his credo is, life is so terrible it would be better if it was replaced by nothing. It's an apocalyptic desire.